Which of the many characters you played would you want to be stuck on a desert island with, and why? Britt Reed, because he's very rich. They'd probably have like some GPS thing that would get us rescued, I would imagine. The rich don't get stuck on desert islands. People save the rich. Hi, I'm Seth Rogen, and Esquire has asked me to explain some things, so let's dive in, shall we? Why do you think Superbad still resonates with teenagers? I think part of the reason it resonates with teenagers is because we were actually teenagers when we wrote it. And there are very few high school movies that were actually written by teenagers. We were very much writing from our experiences, and we were not trying to sugarcoat it, and we were trying to speak to like the emotions we were having as 17, 18-year-old kids, which were, you know, very anxious and very horny and very uncomfortable, and it's a very honest portrayal of what it's like to be a high school kid, and that never changes, you know? Knocked Up turns 15. Judd Apatow says movie was inspired by a random conversation with Seth Rogen. We were trying to think of a movie idea for me, and I think the idea of just like, what if I got a girl pregnant came up, and I was such a disaster. You know, I lived in this like gross apartment. I was just like a mess, but I was 23 or something. Like I was a very normal 23-year-old. Where do I think Ken, my character from Freaks and Geeks, is 25 years later? I don't know. Ken probably fell victim to the opioid epidemic, I would imagine. Ken is a statistic, unfortunately. The Sacklers took Ken down. That would be my guess. Has owning Houseplant taught you any pro tips about rolling the perfect joint? Can you give us a super quick verbal tutorial? I've been good at rolling joints since long before I started Houseplant. I'm a very good joint roller. I'm a confident and fast joint roller. Evenly distribute your weed. Don't grind it too fine. A lot of people, once you put the weed in the bottom of the paper and you're rolling it over, that's where a lot of people come into trouble, is tucking the edge around the weed and then rolling it upwards. I roll up a little cardboard filter and I'll seal one end, and then I'll put the filter in after I've rolled the joint, and it kind of packs in the weed. Some people are f***ing around with little sticks and Allen wrenches and shit like that to pack in the weed, and if you've done it properly, you don't need to do that. You can just close one end, and the insertion of the filter itself will pack in the rest of the joint. Rapid fire pottery preferences? Hand building or wheel? Wheel. Porcelain or earthenware? Porcelain. Coil construction or slab construction? Slab's a little easier. Raku or electric kiln? I own an electric kiln personally. Wax resist or sgraffito? Sgraffito is probably the safer bet. Tell us a Steven Spielberg story. On the set of The Fabelmans, I noticed there's a lot of kids in the movies, and Steven Spielberg's like famous for working with kids, basically. And I would notice that when he was directing the kids in the movie, he treated them like any other actor. In that, I mean, he was not particularly sensitive towards them, to the point that I commented on it. And I went to him and I was like, I thought you'd be like really nice to them, basically. And he was like, kids always listen to the mean teacher more than they listen to the nice teacher. And I thought that was really interesting, and something that is why I'm so mean to kids all the time now. Why do you think sparkling water has taken the world by storm in the last few years? I almost never drink just normal, flat water, and I almost always prefer at least carbonated, and if I can get some sort of flavor in there with no calories, then I'll take it, you know? But yeah, I think the baseline is water's gross. What is the secret to making actually funny kids films? I think I've only made one. I only have the secret for making one actually funny kids film in Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem. I don't have kids. I'm a middle-aged man with no children, so it's nowhere on my radar, honestly. Will kids find this funny? Should kids find this funny? I am purely trying to make something that I think is funny, knowing I can't swear and do drugs, basically. When co-writing The Studio, how much material did me and Evan Goldberg pull from real-life experiences? The crux of the show is my character really loves movies, but is afraid he is going to make them worse, which is a fear I often have in real life. That actually came to me and Evan from a meeting we had with an executive very early on in our careers, where we were getting terrible notes from an executive, and he kind of hung his head as he was giving us notes and looked up at us and was like, you know, I got into this job because I love movies, and now it's my job to ruin them. And we thought, Wow, that is sad and pretty funny in a lot of ways. And yes, I am very worried that real life people will recognize themselves in the show. We've already shown the show to a few people that have inspired some of the moments and storylines of the episodes. People are mostly flattered. When I was a kid and I did stand-up comedy, I would tell jokes about people I knew, and when we wrote Superbad, it was based on a lot of stuff that actually happened to us in high school, and we were afraid our friends would get mad, but they were all psyched about it. But yeah, there's a lot of storylines that are very much based on real people. I hope they're flattered. Would your character in the studio greenlight Donnie Darko? Absolutely not. My character in the studio is far too self-preservational to take a risk on a film like Donnie Darko. Did playing a studio head make you rethink any of your own past studio asks? Yes, I think it made me understand and be more sympathetic in many ways to studio people, but also in some ways much less sympathetic because I see that they could also just do the right thing, like a thing they say a lot in Hollywood is it's show business. There's a reason they call it show business, is it's equal parts show and business. And studio executives are like really the inflection point between the show and the business and like between art and commerce, and they are almost daily put in a position where they have to choose between enabling and encouraging some like bold creative act or being self-preservational and mitigating their risks of things going wrong, which usually makes them think that they should discourage bold acts of creativity. And I think the good studio executives encourage it, and the bad ones are more self-preservational. Bryan Cranston's the studio character is so over the top. How did you keep a straight face in scenes with him? I didn't necessarily keep a straight face, and he's kind of actually very much, you know, it was written much more kind of straight and more like a blue suit kind of person. And then I met with David Zaslav, and he was in like a suede cowboy jacket with like big, like flashy glasses with gold accoutrements on them and stuff. And I was like, David Zaslav dresses like this, that we're being a little too conservative in our choices with Bryan Cranston's characters. So we let him go to town. But as crazy as Bryan is on the show, like he very much fits into the realm of what these guys are actually like, for better or worse. Do you find it difficult acting opposite Nick Offerman without his mustache and dumb money? I find it difficult acting with Nick Offerman altogether because he's so funny. We had to play tennis against each other, and neither of us have ever played tennis in our entire lives. And we both took tennis lessons to make it kind of look like we knew how to play tennis, and we could kind of sell it in like isolated moments. And then there was a moment where they pulled back really wide, and the director was like, now you gotta hit it back and forth to each other. And we're just like, we can't do that. And so we were like, what if you added in a CG ball? And we just kind of acted like we were really doing it. And we did it, and it works amazingly well. It really looks like we know how to play tennis, which is a testament to Nick Offerman's acting. You and Evan Goldberg have collaborated on a long list of successful projects. How do you push each other creatively? I think we both really just try to do things that we're both very excited by. And I think that's actually good having both of us, because if we're not both very excited by an idea, then we don't do it. And we also are very petty people. So a thing we ask ourselves a lot is would we be jealous if someone else made this? And / if we make this, will our friends be jealous of us? And that's all we want, really, more than anything. What's the best directing advice your wife has ever given you? You know, it's funny, because I think as an actor, I have a very singular and specific view of how I like to be spoken to by directors. And that is, I don't like it. But what I've found, and what my wife has told me, is a lot of actors don't like that, and they like to talk about the scenes, and they like to check in, and even if things are going well, have a moment where they kind of, like to just kind of reassess how everything's going and be encouraged, which that's not my instinct, and my wife has encouraged me to do that with my actors, and I do, and a lot of them seem to really like it, so it was good advice. How does your work as an improviser influence your work as a writer? You know, I feel like my ear as a writer has always gone towards naturalistic conversation. I'm not great at constructing setups and punchlines and things like that. I work with people who that's their thing. I more try to create situations that just by speaking the way people normally speak, comedy comes out, basically, you know? And so I think that is helpful as an improviser, and something I was always trained to do as an improviser is say what you would say in this situation. Be honest to what you feel like you would be expressing in these moments, and that is how I try to write as well. Which role are you most recognized for? Do fans quote lines at you? Maybe Pineapple Express the most. It speaks to a lot of people in a very specific way. So I get a lot of stoners coming up to me telling me Pineapple Express is their favorite movie, and I'm very appreciative of that. Thank you so much.